Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Arduin review. It's Friday, and you know what that means. Book 9 of the Arduin Trilogy of Trilogies. That would be Endwar. Another fine book in the collection. I went over it again this morning and, just skimmed through it to refresh my memory because it's been like 2 weeks since I went through the whole book. But again, another great book. Let's get right into it. There's a couple pages of dedications, which are, pretty awesome. Of course, I wish I was in there, but maybe next time. Once again, we're going to hit up with the table of contents. The first chapter is Dungeons and Why the Authorities Don't Shut Them Down. Kind of a clever little chapter here with various excuses why the dungeons are still stocked full of monsters and the local authorities haven't come in and like I said, shut them down. I want to actually do that once and have a local militia or the whole the whole army of the town just go in and just make it spotless and take it over. But then on to the Arduin view on lending between characters. I've never had a problem with this. Most people, don't go far enough into their backstory and, make their last will and testament. And even if they did, sorry, if there's a potion of healing in your backpack, it's not making it home because the party's going to need it just to get there. But, there's some good ideas and maybe, you could take them to heart. Then betrayal and being bad. I've run many an evil party, and one of the greatest joys in running an evil party is getting them to realize the error of their ways and letting them decide on their own that they should actually, change their alignment, and become the good guys instead of being the bad guys. But I'll leave that up to you guys. Then the scout class, kind of a everyman ranger, not so much as the Aragorn type of ranger, but more of a character class that's not just good at traversing the forests and tracking animals, but surviving shipboard and swamps and deserts and just scouting out ahead of the party or the army or the group and coming back with the relevant information. Then there's a nice chapter on the Arduin government. More useful for those of you. Oh my goodness, someone's being a goofball. More how to structure your government and the structure of Arduin and how it's built up from the ground up all the way up to Lord Elric at the very tippy top. Then more Arduin customs. Again, I suggest you make up your own grimoire for your own areas and include exactly such a thing as the customs and superstitions of the area in which the players are tromping around in. Let them get little tidbits on the area that they're in. So that they can remember the area a little more. More than just another town, another forest, another country that, more or less medieval or, what have you. Then a historical perspective on the Thieves Guild and Arduin. I wish this was all lumped up together, and I'm assuming it's going to be, but it seemed a little bit repetitive, but maybe it's just because last night on Table Breakers, the episode, and thanks again, guys, that was a good episode. That was all about guilds, and obviously the most common guild that people playing Dungeons and Dragons are familiar with is, of course, the Thieves Guild, and maybe the Assassins Guild or the Merchants Guild. But the Thieves Guild is always, for me that was the first time I actually encountered the word as a young guy. I didn't know what a guild was up until that point. Then the Arduin Undercities. I noticed that this idea of an underground world was highly borrowed from certain big companies creating their own underworld, where it's not just, long winding tunnels all over the place, but actually civilized areas, and not just the drow, but other races that had full societies underground, and of course the Great Worm Road, I think it was called, being the major thoroughfare through the undercities of Arduin. I really like the idea. Unfortunately, so many other companies have borrowed this idea and really, blown it up. So I'm probably not going to use it so much for a while until it sort of, dies down in the newest fad, so to speak. But it was very, very informative and very interesting on how he described it. Then the Winds of Change, which was a frightening, frightening concept when once a year on the Plateau of Forever, all of the gates to other worlds all simultaneously open up, and these chaotic winds of vortexes and mystic energy just go all over the place and warp and twist everything, within a certain radius of the area. And it could really, really mess up your area, but at the same time, it could provide for, a very, very interesting 24 hours, to say the least. Then the Innkeepers Ballad. You know what? I don't even remember that one. Page 29. Sorry, guys. I must have skipped it, thinking it was part of another chapter. It was mostly... Oh, yeah, I remember it now. It was some notes on inns and roadhouses and taverns. And again, Seth Skorkowski had a nice video this morning about you all meet in a tavern. And I myself haven't done that in quite some time. But if you're going to do it, this is the chapter to check out for a lot of tips on how to do that. Get your party together and, just what taverns and inns in Arduin are like. Then the next couple of chapters, the War Dogs of Arduin and the Arduin Equines. Basically the dogs and horses of Arduin. Like previous chapter, he had one on birds. This one's about dogs. And of course horses, the different types of horses and the different types of dogs of Arduin. Describing them in various detail. Their appearance, their capabilities, and, their temperament and things like that. And it's not a bad idea to have, more or less mundane animals, but that you tweak just a little bit, make them your own, make them, unique to your world. I really like that idea. Most dungeon masters really don't do much of that. And I think the same could be said for things like cows, pigs, and chickens. We eat the most cows, pigs, and chickens here in the U.S., and having other animals that are just as tasty. Sorry, PETA, but I'm gonna keep on eating cows, pigs, and chickens until the day I die. But I wouldn't mind seeing some other animals thrown into the mix that are completely different, not just different stripes or colors or spots or sizes, but something vastly different in the way of farm animals. But it was still a really nice couple of chapters. Then the casting of the cards. Right over here we have the Swords and Dragons cards that were sent to us by Emperor's Choice. Let's see if I can open this one-handed and not lose my place. We haven't opened these up yet just because I finally found the rules for these, and they're actually on the Emperor's Choice website. It's a game very similar to poker, but with more suits and more distinct rules, but very much like poker. And I'm dying to get the little guy to play a game, but I want to find some really good poker chips in various denominations, or maybe just like some of those Hershey's miniatures, so that we could use them as various denominations, and whoever wins the pot. Something to make it a better way to gauge on who won and who lost at the end of the night. But it seems like a very interesting game, and it would be really nice to be able to play with a couple of different people who are familiar with it, so they could, show me the ropes, so that then, when I'm playing with my gaming group, that we could, play a couple of quick hands before, during, or after a game, more or less, replaying the gambling that might go on in a tavern encounter. But these cards are also used as a sort of tarot card fortune-telling deck where, you know, each and every individual card has a specific meaning. They can also be very handy as an improved deck of many things. I want to explore that idea. But either way, very nice section on the cards. Very nice cards in themselves. You have to excuse Chewer. He's going crazy. I think Amazon is making a delivery, and he's a knucklehead. Then this was probably one of my favorite chapters in the whole series. Was famous Arduin shipwrecks. I absolutely love the idea of famous shipwrecks that have yet to be found and razed or pillaged or plundered by the adventuring party. They finally find it. They pull up the treasure and, then try and make use of the treasure because, as you know, if it's a famous shipwreck, it's probably got something on board that somebody really wants back really bad. But this was, it wasn't really a long chapter. And I've done similar things, where the treasure is a sunken ship. It's on the treasure map. That's what they're going for. They get their boat. They find it with, locate object spell or something like that. Finally find it. Find a way to go down into the water and, bring it up. And this was just a great idea I've used in the past. And I hope you guys, out there get a chance to do similar adventures. And then, where are we? New Arduin spells, new Arduin magic items, and new monsters. Every book has got a small little chunk of these. And, the magic items, the monsters, they're that thing that Dave A. Hargrave left us all. We've all used it. Other than the critical hit and fumble table, these three things are the biggest boon to dungeon masters and players alike. More spells that for the most part weren't, borrowed and sucked into other gaming systems that I'm familiar with. Maybe a few here and there. Magic items unlike anybody else ever put out, except, maybe myself. Sorry, guys, but I'm pretty good at it. And then, of course, the monsters, which absolutely, some of the best monsters in all of role-playing are found right here in these books. Insanity and Obsession. Every game I've ever played has had a pretty extensive set of rules and descriptions and definitions for insanity, but also obsessions, which, can be taken as a minor form of insanity. Really well plot out here for this game system, for that time. Other games may have some system that you like more other than Call of Cthulhu or Shadows of Brimstone, which is just going to destroy your characters. But it was necessary, and I'm glad he finished it off in his own, particular way, and glad it was here. Then more technological weapons of Arduin and unique Arduin weapons, both, just good old-fashioned inventions that were made by regular folks or technos. A lot of games don't have really that idea. Maybe some of the newer Dungeons & Dragons rules have those things. I would know. I'll probably never know because I'm not touching anything past 2nd edition. But a nice little group of gadgets, gizmos, and personalized weapons from the world of Arduin. And thankfully, none of them were weapons that I created, over my gaming career. Some of the gizmos and techno devices are also not things that I've thought about. Maybe I had something similar here and there, but not really. They're all, very useful, especially for low-level campaigns where you want to, give something out, but you don't want to give out a magic item, but you want to give them that one thing or something, just to, like I've said before, have that ace up their sleeve that doesn't radiate magic, and people just, they don't know what it is, they're not expecting it. Maybe later on they'll attribute it to magic, and, the story or the legend of the player characters in that particular situation will get told down the line, and it'll get bigger and bigger, and all the while it was just, a bottle opener or something. Something more or less mundane that hadn't been thought of, but just something you could make in a blacksmith shop, and, just with the right, thought process you'd come up with. But, I've always had a couple of things like that in my games, but between these 9 books, there's actually quite a few really, really creative technological devices that you guys might want to think about, handing out instead of, that +1 sword, if you think it's too early. Then creative uses of treasure. I really like this chapter because, especially for higher level games, when, okay, 10,000 gold pieces is, that's a lot of weight to lug around. But, paintings or heirlooms or things like that don't really actually have the monetary value if you were to try to, take it apart and piece it out and sell it. But if you trek all the way to this town, to this kingdom, and you return it to this particular family or monarch or what have you, the reward is far greater than the sum of its parts. Things like that. I really like doing that. That way, when they get to town, they get the money as opposed to having to try to lug all that money to town. Again, I'm referring back to last night's video on table breakers, Kai. I totally hear you on that one. Having earned all this treasure in the dungeon, only to then have it taken away from you piece by piece before you ever get to the town, for one reason or another, because your dungeon master just really didn't want you to have the treasure in the first place. Poor form on that dungeon master's participation in that adventure. And then transdimensional movement. I can't help but harken back to the Amber Chronicles and Hell Riding and Shadow Traveling. Some of my favorite ways of going from one dimension to another. Various games have had different ways about it, but I really like the, for every step you take, you get closer. It's not just a doorway, boom, you walk through the door, you're there, but subtle little changes along the road to the next dimension, again, akin to Zelazny's Hell Rides and Shadow Walking, where you get the visual different changes, the subtle little things as you go. So it's not just a boom, okay, you're there, instead of a teleport. It just makes it a little more visual, a little more enjoyable, a little bit more, memorable. So that way, it's just not so, like a board game or something like that. It's a role-playing game. Let's be creative, on all the travels and all the different ways to travel. And then, not finally, but may as well be, the elemental planes. I really like the fact that, before anybody else, he really, really went into describing the different elemental planes, not just the way they look, but the air or lack of air that you breathe there, the poisons, the gases, just the horrible differences there would be. Even the elemental plane of Earth wouldn't be full of regular, air that we breathe. There'd be all kinds of toxic gases even there. And, of course, the plane of fire and all the different planes that he goes into, how they'd all be very different than what we may have experienced before in other campaigns, or just what we might think of the elemental plane of fire or the elemental plane of air. Some of these places would be instantly deadly as soon as you walked in without the proper protection. I really like that idea that you really, really need to be careful. Not just, having a ring of fire protection to go into the elemental plane of fire. Well, that protects you from burning, but that doesn't protect you from the heat or the poison gases or the molten metals that are going to land on you every so often. Just really well done chapter on the elemental planes. And ideas I'm going to always put forward in my campaigns. Then the Kingdom of Arduin and its surrounding nations, followed by a preview of the World of Kos. I think the two should have just been the same chapter because they virtually are. Just more glimpses into the actual world of Arduin, the geography, the political structures, the landscapes, all those different things that are in the big white dictionary that I'll be going over next month. I am still only partially through that book. It's a heck of a book. It's massive, and the world of Arduin is definitely something every gamer should get to experience at least once in their life, and I'm looking forward to helping make that a reality for all my gaming buddies and a lot of gamers that, you know, I've just started to develop friendships with online, so that, you know, I can game with people all over the world. And the first world I want to run is Arduin, and hopefully that'll be the case. But again, thanks to Emperor's Choice. George, I hope you like this one. Everybody out there, grab your copies of Arduin, get stuck in there, enjoy the heck out of it, because it is by far one of the best game worlds ever created. And we all of us gamers all owe a huge debt of gratitude to David A. Hargrave, and now to Emperor's Choice for bringing it back to us so that we can actually read it, enjoy it, and never forget it. So until next time, folks, have a great weekend. We love you guys. It's Friday. Get those burgers on the grill, and we will see you Sunday. Good night, everybody.